Hello, Shadarek here. Just going to briefly go over the patch changes that are coming in on May 6th, which include buffs to Havoc Demon Hunter. Just to go over everything and not just the Havoc changes. On Holy Death Knight, this has a nerf going into Blood Beast, and as far as I'm being told, this is about a 46% nerf to the damage Blood Beast does. However, with the other buffs, they are getting a buff in a single target for raid, while this is a large nerf in M+, somewhere around 3 to 5%, depending on the key and on their RNG. Havoc gets a 4% buff, but I'll go over the numbers more in depth after this, as 4% doesn't really represent it, and it is a bit less than that, but it is still a good buff. Guardian has a 5% buff, where Feral has 3% to all abilities and auto attacks. Augmentation's getting a 15% buff to their own abilities, but not anything to their buffs, which I think is a good way to keep buffing them. There's a buff to Spellslinger Frost, and there is significant buffs to Rep Paladin for their single target. I'm not sure exact numbers of what this is going to look like, but there's an 80% buff to Blade of Justice, which I think is a hilariously large number. Lastly, Holy Priest got a 4% aura buff to their healing, and Warrior got a 30% buff to Blade Storm on both specs. So, for Havoc, this is the important one, obviously. We have a 4% aura buff, and our Reaver's Mark debuff application can no longer be parried. That change is bigger for Raid than it is for M+. As for the 4% aura, let's take a look at that really briefly. Now, I did run the numbers for this already, but basically, our aura does not affect Fury of the Eldrachi, which means Fury of the Eldrachi will not be getting that 4% buff. Including that, Wounded Quarry that is generated from Fury of the Eldrachi is also not going to be buffed, and this is also true for Warblade's Hunger, and our melee swings were not buffed either. So that concludes that it's going to be 11.63% of our damage that is not getting buffed, and that is physical. And a portion of our Wounded Quarry from that is not going to be buffed either. This came out to be about a 3.1% damage buff overall for a key, so we're getting buffed over 3% flat. That's still a good spot to be. For Felsguard, this number is going to be a bit bigger, but it's also not 4%. Now, the reason for that is our aura is already at a 9% buff. So when we get a 4% aura buff, we don't get 4% damage outright. We're going from 9% increase to a 13% increase. And that comes out to a 3.67% buff. That's before the fact that auto attacks are also unbuffed. So that's why those numbers don't line up to exactly where you might expect. The buff is a little bit smaller than it seems, but we're looking at about 3.1% to Eldrachi and 3.6% to Felsguard. Looking at Raid, adding a 3% buff to the damage that we're currently doing, you're looking at going from 2.533 million to about 2.61 million. And this is on 75th percentile for Mythic. 2.61 million is going to bring us right in line with Arcane Mage, comfortably in the upper half. If you look at Heroic, it's going to be in a similar situation, and the 2.2 is going to be buffed up to 2.27 mil. And that's, again, actually about exactly where Arcane Mage is sitting, and we're going to be pretty much exactly at middle of the pack here. I think Feral Druid is getting buffed ahead of that, so we're still jumping up quite a few slots, however, and Havoc tends to perform a bit better the higher that you go on percentiles. So I think Havoc's going to be in a pretty good place after this, and with the buffs for Mythic Plus, I felt that we were already good. Considering the fact that Unholy is also getting this significant nerf, I think that we'll see a bit less of Unholy getting invited into keys, and with our buff, that spot can a lot more frequently go to us. So getting yourself into Pug keys should be a good bit easier after the change, once people have read and noticed the patch notes and feel the difference on Unholy, as that is a significant nerf to them. So today we get to rejoice. That's all I have to go over. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.